Can I tell you about a conversation that stayed with me? But before I do, if you're new here, hi, I'm Krishna. And I have the privilege of listening to people's stories every day and helping them navigate through some of most difficult chapters of their lives. And if there's one thing I've learned out of everything that I do, it's that while I may be able to help people heal, every conversation actually leaves me with something to learn, heal, or see differently within myself too. This was one of those conversations. Before I talk about that conversation, there's something I want to say. The hardest apology you'll ever give is the one you owe yourself. And I'll repeat that. Listen to that again. The hardest apology you'll ever give is the one you owe yourself. And I say this out of experience as well. But this is about this one client. I was speaking to this client recently. He looked at me, and during the session, he actually said, I know I hurt her. I'm so sorry, you know, for everything I've put her through. And if I could take away her pain, I would. I definitely believed him. We've been through a couple of sessions together by now. His regret is real. Sometimes as coaches and healers, we can tell the difference between someone who's defending themselves and someone who's genuinely carrying the weight of what they've done. And he wasn't making any excuse. In fact, he has been carrying this guilt, and we kept talking about it. And while we were talking about it, I just realized something, that in everything that he said, he was so focused on the pain he had caused that he had never stopped to ask himself this question, that why did he keep behaving in ways that hurt the people he loved. I'll repeat that. A lot of times we apologize, but we don't really stop and ask this question to ourselves, that why are we behaving in ways that actually hurt our loved ones, right? And I think that's where many of us get stuck, because we become so consumed with the consequences of our actions that we never become curious about the patterns behind them, because behavior doesn't really appear out of nowhere, right? Like the way we react, the way we love, the way we shut down someone, the way we get angry, like anything, it is actually often a reflection of something much older, probably a wound, a belief, a fear, something that we've learned long ago and we've been carrying it without even realizing it. With the kind of work I do, I've come to believe that many people hurt others, rather, who hurt others are carrying wounds they haven't learned to face themselves. Of course, understanding that doesn't excuse the behavior, because the hurt is real, accountability is still important. But understanding the root of a behavior is often what allows us to change it. Because if we only focus on feeling guilty without understanding why we keep seeing the same patterns, or why we keep repeating the same patterns, nothing really changes. In fact, nothing actually changes at all. So I asked him this one question, that I understand, you've hurt her and you want to take away the pain. But for once, what if instead of trying to stop her from hurting, or trying so hard to, help her, what if you started by stopping yourself from hurting? And there was just silence. He became quiet. He just went silent, because no one had ever asked him this question before. And unfortunately, people might not like me, saying this, but I'm going to say this out loud, that men are always taught to be strong. Men are always taught that showing their emotions means they are weak, or they are not supposed to be doing that. And of course that stays with a lot of men. And of course that's a conversation for the next time. But coming back to this conversation, we spend so much of our lives apologizing for what we've done. We try to repair relationships, we try to make things right, we try to undo the damage. But sometimes I think the hardest apology is the one we owe ourselves, because we are the ones who are ignoring our own pain, pretending that we are okay, convincing ourselves that surviving, means healing. A lot of people think like that. Uh, we carry wounds we've never acknowledged until they actually spill into our relationships. And psychology teaches us exactly that unless we become aware of our pattern, we're going to continue to repeat it. Not because we want to, but because what's familiar often feels safer than what's healthy. And that's exactly why awareness is so powerful. I'm not saying that you don't apologize or you don't try to uh, help others, the one who you've hurt, to stop hurting, but then you cannot heal a wound you refuse to acknowledge. Healing isn't just about someone who hurts less, it's about becoming someone who hurts less inside. Because when you heal what's bleeding within you, you stop bleeding onto the people around you. And maybe that's where every real apology begins. It's not about just saying sorry to somebody who you've hurt. It is, I think, more to do with understanding what caused that pattern, what caused that behavior. For example, if somebody kind of becomes really angry at every small situation, or yells, or uh, has a particular pattern of throwing things around, why is that person doing that? Often people do that, and then once they calm down, they come back and say sorry, but the damage is already done. Now, you could actually say sorry. If the opposite person is quite understanding, that person is going to let it go. But how many times is that person going to let go of you? How many times is that person going to be okay with you repeating this kind of behavior, repeating this kind of pattern? And somewhere that person who's getting angry probably even understands, okay, this is not what I'm supposed to do, because that's when that person comes and apologizes, right? But there are layers to this that one needs to unfold, because until and unless you do not look deeper into yourself, until and unless you're not going to be able to heal yourself, you're not going to be able to heal your relationship, neither are you going to be able to help the person who you've hurt heal. And that is exactly what matters. Healing begins the day you start understanding your patterns, the day you start apologizing to yourself for behaving in a pattern that you probably didn't even realize you've been carrying it. And I think once you start doing that, the relationship, not only with others but with yourself, will first start becoming so beautiful that ultimately all your relationships turn out to be amazing. So if this conversation stayed with you, stay with me. I'll see you in the next one.